Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's Monday morning and you've tuned in to find out what's happening in Retardistan. Well, to be honest, quite a lot, but also pretty much more of the same. So before we get on to the main video of today, can you yet again remind you, please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, click the bell icon. So let's get on to the first story, which I'm going to talk about. That's going to be the Iran and Israel-US escalations. Now, the United States and Israel have escalated their military operations against Iran following the killing of the Ayatollah. Now, as you know, Iran responded with missiles and drone attacks targeting Israel and many of the regional players in that area. Now, US intelligence warns Iran and its proxy networks will remain a persistent threat to US interests, particularly through cyber attacks, proxy militias, and asymmetric retaliation. So that's basically just firing all their shitty little rockets off into Israel and surrounding territories. Now, who are we talking about specifically? Well, the Houthis and Hezbollah, both of which have said that they will join the war. Originally, they said they wouldn't, and then, I don't know, maybe the check bounced, and they thought they'd better go fight it. But it's not going to end well for them, because what this inevitably does is it allows Israel to take the gloves off. Israel's diplomacy so far has been one of retaliation. So effectively, what that means is that Israel only responded to threats when it was attacked. Now Israel is shifting that position to attack first, ask questions later. Israel being one of the most powerful militaries in that region, well, this isn't going to end well for the jihadis. Now, as you know, Washington has framed the strikes as justified retaliation against Iran's threats, including an alleged plot to assassinate the US President Donald Trump. Now, according to the latest news, apparently some Pakistani man had been paid to assassinate Donald Trump. You can see the article on the screen. Whether or not it's true or not, I have no idea. But what I can tell you is that the Ayatollah's Twitter account is still pushing out propaganda, threatening to annihilate the West and Israel. Now, the US Defense Secretary said that Trump has had the last laugh after key Iranian figures linked to the Trump assassination plot were apparently killed in strikes against Iran. Now, last week, there was an attempt by the US Senate to block Donald Trump's military powers, so he wouldn't be able to conduct any further military action against Iran without congressional approval. This obviously after the Democrats had decided that this was the right time to support Iran, that historical ally of the US. In any case, the US Senate blocked the resolution that would limit Donald Trump's ability to conduct his military actions. So as a result, the US president retains broad war powers to continue the military campaign. Now, there is a debate in Washington over whether the strikes constitute self-defense or an escalation in a wider war. Now, Iran is facing the US-Israel military campaign largely alone. Now, this is really, really important because you must remember that South Africa lobbied to get Iran included into BRICS. But all of Iran's traditional partners are offering limited support. So basically, Iran last year signed a military cooperation agreement with Russia and China. And both of them are like, we're sending you our feels and thoughts and prayers in these hard times, but don't knock on our door, we don't want anything to do with it. So Russia and China have mainly responded with diplomatic criticism, saying that the US should have forms of restraint and that they should go back to the peace negotiations. Now, Donald Trump at the weekend said there is no negotiations. He will not negotiate. The only form of negotiation will be the complete surrender of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and to be involved in picking a new leader of Iran. Because, as Donald Trump says, he will make Iran great again. But it's important to recognize China and Russia are not sending forms of military backing. Now, there is some suggestions that China is sending key intel to Iran that's allowing it to conduct certain military activities, but that's pretty much it. There's sharing activities of intelligence going on and good feelings. Now, analysts say that both these countries, Russia and China, are reluctant to become militarily involved due to the risk of a wider global conflict and economic consequences. So effectively, they're worried that if they get involved, we've got World War III and it's going to damage their economies. And in the modern world, when economies suffer and people's living standards degrade, well, people generally tend to take note of that. They'll put up with a lot of stuff, high taxation, all the other stupid rubbish that the government wants to do. But when they see that quality of life disintegrate and that jobs disappear, people generally tend to start to get upset. So yeah, it stands to reason that they're withdrawing themselves from the conflict. But why is this important? Well, it's important because, the South African retards, they often jump on my feet and tell me South Africa should not align with the US. It's got all its BRICS partners, and its BRICS partners will bail it out. Yeah, BRICS partners are not bailing out Iran for nothing. It's not a NATO alliance, and I don't understand why people don't understand this. BRICS is not a NATO alliance, it's not a military alliance, it's not an economic alliance. And we've seen this. So despite joining BRICS in 2024, so that means it's been there for like a few years now, the bloc has not produced a unified response to the conflict. Even the bloc can't agree on whether or not even wants to condemn the actions. I mean, India itself has just been in Israel to strengthen diplomatic ties between the two countries. Like, that's a key player in BRICS, the I in BRICS. So what you're already seeing is that there is mixed feelings, even in the BRICS community, as to what their feelings on the conflict is. Now, some analysts are arguing that what this shows is that BRICS is politically divided and lacks any form of coordinated foreign policy. And that lack of coordination of foreign policy means that they can't exert influence because of the size of BRICS. So remember, South Africa is like, hey, BRICS have got our back. BRICS don't have the back of no one. Now, this conflict is causing concerns around energy supply disruptions in the Middle East. Tensions around key shipping routes and oil infrastructure have also raised fears of higher global oil prices and economic instability. I've already covered what this may mean for South Africa in terms of the higher cost of petrol and also in terms of our economy. Now, the situation is being closely monitored by governments and financial markets worldwide, because the reality is all of this is going to depend on how long this conflict continues for. Now, US intelligence agencies are warning Iran and its proxies that they may pursue long-term retaliation. In other words, that this conflict may actually go on for some time. Why is that? Well, because the proxies, remember all the Hezbollah and the what? Well, all of those individuals are suggesting that they will be involved in cyber attacks, proxy militia activity, terrorism, or attacks on US allies, including the US itself. And that's obviously going to prompt reprisals. So this conflict could, in theory, go on for some time. Now, officials say that the threat environment is likely to remain elevated even if direct fighting slows. So what we know is that even if the conflict with Iran stops tomorrow, because of the threat, because of the infiltration into Western countries by many of these militia groups, we've all seen the large quantities of undocumented men going into these countries, the threat for domestic terrorism is likely to remain there for some time. Now, in other news, the Western Cape leadership, the ANC Western Cape leadership, has paid a tribute to the Iran supreme leader. The one that was bombed, the Ayatollah. Now, during the same event, speakers criticized President Donald Trump over the conflict. Now, the incident itself, the ANC's denouncements of Donald Trump, highlights ongoing tensions in South Africa because of our foreign policy positions, specifically in relation to the US. I've covered this tons. Like, no one else in BRICS is backing Iran. Apart from the yapping chihuahua, there is the ANC. Now, there is some positives in all this, and we actually have a politician in South Africa that can see the bright side of the conflict, and that's Gayton McKenzie. And that's because the Middle Eastern conflict is due to disrupt the Formula One calendar with several races that were due to be held in Gulf countries. So Gayton stepped in and said, one of the things he said that he wanted to achieve as Minister of Sports and Culture is to have the F1, the Formula One in South Africa. And he says that if those races are due to be cancelled, that he would like South Africa to be put forward as the potential replacement for those venues, and that South Africa could effectively host the F1. So Gayton would actually get his wish. See, that's smart. That's how you do things. You don't go in there and just denounce every old person and sundry. You go, how could we possibly make this work? Smart. Anyway, onto a final news article, and this is around Patrice Motsepe, because I've told you in numerous videos, he's the guy that the ANC are trying to push forward to win the ANC leadership and become president of the country. Numerous analysts are talking about this. You can see that the media want to push this guy as their guy, as the guy to replace Cyril Ramaphosa. You can see that there's a certain faction within the ANC that also think he'd be great, specifically because he's obviously connected to Cyril Ramaphosa through family ties. Now, the reality is, as I've said in my videos, he don't want to do the job. He sees it as a poisoned chalice. And so, would you know it, this week everybody's been speculating around his future as the future leader of the country. That's if the ANC even wins, and they're not likely to, based on current polling. But let's just assume that they did, then apparently he'd be the president. And they're all talking about it. But he himself, when asked, said no. He said the entire leadership campaign is false and unfounded. He said that the promotional material and campaigns have nothing to do with him, and he doesn't want the job. But the ANC is still going to push him forward as their guy. You know why? They have no one else. Because the ANC is, yet again, retarded. Anyway, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and until next time, bye.